At exactly 2:17 a.m., the emergency entrance of Saintons Medical Center burst open. Rain poured from the dark sky. Thunder shook the windows. An ambulance rushed past the entrance carrying another critical patient. Inside the hospital, nurses hurried from room to room. Doctors shouted medical instructions. Phones rang without stopping. It was the busiest night anyone could remember. Then, the automatic doors opened once more. An elderly homeless man slowly stepped inside. His clothes were soaked. His beard was covered with rainwater. His hands trembled from the freezing cold. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't shouting. He simply stood quietly near the entrance, trying not to get in anyone's way. Several people glanced at him before looking away. A security guard approached politely. "Sir, the emergency room is very busy tonight." The old man nodded with a tired smile. "I understand. I don't need a doctor." The guard looked confused. "What do you need?" The man lowered his eyes. "If it's possible. Could I have an old blanket? I'll sleep outside once the rain slows down." The guard felt sorry for him. "Wait here." Before he could leave, a young nurse overheard the conversation. Her name was Grace Miller, 29 years old. Kind, hardworking, the type of nurse every patient hoped to meet. She walked toward the old man carrying a folded hospital blanket. "Here. You don't have to sleep outside tonight." The man accepted it carefully, almost as though it was something priceless. "Thank you." Grace noticed something unusual. Despite his worn clothes, the old man spoke with remarkable calmness. His posture was straight. His words were gentle. There was an unusual dignity about him. She smiled. "My name is Grace." The man hesitated, then quietly answered, "Samuel." Before Grace could ask another question, the man suddenly began coughing. Not an ordinary cough. A deep, painful cough that left him struggling to breathe. His knees weakened. The blanket slipped from his hands. Grace caught him before he hit the floor. "Sir, can you hear me?" Within seconds, two nurses rushed over with a wheelchair. Samuel tried to protest. "I'm all right. I don't want to take someone else's bed." Grace looked directly into his eyes. "Tonight, you're our patient. No more arguments." A few minutes later, Samuel was lying in a small examination room. His body temperature was dangerously low. His blood pressure had dropped. The doctor ordered several routine blood tests. While attaching an identification bracelet, Grace asked softly, "Do you have any family we can call?" Samuel looked toward the ceiling. "Not anymore." "No children?" He smiled sadly. "I had a daughter once." Grace noticed the way he said had. She didn't ask another question. Some wounds didn't need questions. They needed silence. While waiting for the lab results, Grace searched Samuel's worn backpack for identification. Inside she found a half-empty bottle of water, 2 old sweaters, a small notebook tied with string, and a weathered leather wallet. There was only one card inside, an old medical license. Grace almost dropped it. She stared at the name, Dr. Samuel Carter. Her heartbeat quickened. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." She turned the card over again. The photo was younger, but unmistakably the same man. One of the senior doctors entered the room. "Grace, what are the lab?" He stopped mid-sentence after seeing the card. His face turned completely pale. He looked at the elderly homeless man sleeping quietly on the bed. Then he whispered words Grace never expected to hear. 20 years ago. Dr. Samuel Carter was the finest heart surgeon this hospital had ever seen. Grace slowly looked back at Samuel. The homeless man asking for a blanket had once been the doctor whose name was still engraved on the hospital's wall of honor. But no one knew how one of the country's most respected surgeons had lost everything. And hidden inside Samuel's old notebook was a secret that would change the lives of everyone in that hospital forever. Grace couldn't take her eyes off the old medical license. She looked from the card to the frail man lying quietly on the hospital bed, then back to the card again. The name was unmistakable. Dr. Samuel Carter, the legendary heart surgeon. the man whose photograph still hung in the hospital's Hall of Honor. How is this possible? Grace whispered. The senior physician beside her, Dr. Richard Collins, let out a long sigh. You were still a child when he disappeared. Grace looked at him. What happened to him? Dr. Collins stared through the glass window at Samuel. 20 years ago, everyone believed he abandoned medicine. He resigned overnight. He sold his house, closed his private clinic, and vanished without saying goodbye. There were rumors. Some said he stole money. Others believed he had a mental breakdown. But no one ever learned the truth. Grace looked back at Samuel. He doesn't look like someone who ran away. Dr. Collins nodded slowly. Neither did I. A few hours later, Samuel finally opened his eyes. Grace was sitting quietly beside his bed. He smiled weakly. I suppose I caused quite a bit of trouble. Grace smiled back. You almost froze to death. You should have come here much sooner. Samuel chuckled softly. I've spent my whole life treating patients. I never imagined becoming one. Grace hesitated before asking, were you really a heart surgeon? Samuel looked out the window. For several seconds, he didn't answer. Finally, he nodded. Once. Grace leaned forward. Everyone says you disappeared. Samuel closed his eyes. Sometimes. The only way to protect the people you love is to disappear. Those words left Grace speechless. That afternoon, Grace opened the old notebook she had found in Samuel's backpack. She expected phone numbers or shopping lists. Instead, every page contained names, hundreds of names, each followed by a date, and a short note. One page read, Emily Watson, age 9, needed emergency surgery. Family couldn't pay. Another, James Miller, age 42, widower, paid hospital bill anonymously. Another, Maria Lopez, age 67, bought heart medication for 11 months. Grace kept turning pages. Every name belonged to someone Samuel had quietly helped. Near the last page, a folded newspaper clipping slipped onto the floor. The headline read, Famous surgeon resigns after malpractice allegations. Grace quickly picked it up. Below the headline was Samuel's photograph. She looked toward his room. Could the newspaper have been telling the truth? Or had everyone believed a lie? Later that evening, Grace couldn't stop thinking about the article. She walked into the hospital archives. Dust-covered shelves filled with old employee records. After nearly an hour of searching, she found Samuel Carter's personnel file. Inside, something didn't make sense. The malpractice investigation had never been completed. There was no guilty verdict, no medical license suspension, no court judgment, only one handwritten note. Case closed at Dr. Carter's personal request. Grace frowned. Why would an innocent man ask for the case to be closed? Just then, an elderly hospital receptionist entered the archive room. She looked at the file in Grace's hands. I wondered when someone would finally ask. Grace turned quickly. You knew Dr. Carter? The woman smiled sadly. I knew the truth. Grace's heart began racing. What truth? The receptionist slowly sat down. Then she whispered. The patient who died during that surgery was Dr. Carter's own wife. Grace froze. What? The woman nodded. She needed a rare emergency operation. No other surgeon in the state had enough experience. So Samuel operated on the person he loved most. For 12 straight hours. He fought to save her. But she didn't survive. Grace felt tears filling her eyes. The newspapers blamed him. The public blamed him. But no one blamed him more than he blamed himself. He resigned the next morning. And disappeared. Grace looked down at the newspaper clipping again. The story that had destroyed Samuel's life had never told the whole truth. That night, Grace quietly returned to Samuel's room. He was awake, looking at an old photograph. A smiling woman stood beside a little girl. Your family. Samuel smiled through tears. My wife. And my daughter. Grace asked softly, "Where is your daughter now?" Samuel's eyes filled with pain. "I don't know. After my wife died. My daughter couldn't forgive me. She believed I chose my career over her mother. I never blamed her. I only prayed that one day she'd know how much I loved them both." At that moment, a nurse rushed into the room. "Grace! Emergency! A 7-year-old boy needs immediate heart surgery. The only pediatric surgeon is stuck 2 hours away because of the storm." Doctors began running through the hallway. Parents were crying. Every second mattered. Samuel quietly looked toward the emergency room doors. His eyes met Dr. Collins's. Then, after 20 years away from an operating room, he spoke 5 words that stunned everyone. "Prepare the operating theater. I'll do it." The entire hallway fell silent, because the homeless man everyone had ignored was about to perform the most important surgery of his life. The emergency department exploded into motion. Doctors rushed through the corridors. Nurses prepared the operating room. A 7-year-old boy named Ethan had only minutes left. His heart was failing. The only pediatric heart surgeon was trapped on a flooded highway nearly 2 hours away. There wasn't enough time. The boy's mother collapsed into a chair, crying, "Please, someone save my son." Silence filled the hallway. Then all eyes turned toward the elderly homeless man standing quietly beside the wall. Dr. Samuel Carter. Dr. Collins walked over. "Samuel, you haven't performed surgery in 20 years." Samuel looked at the frightened little boy through the glass doors. His voice was calm. "You never forget how to save a life." "But..." Dr. Collins hesitated. "What if your hands aren't steady anymore?" Samuel slowly held out his hands. They trembled slightly. He smiled. "They tremble because I'm old. They become steady when someone needs me." 10 minutes later, Samuel stood inside the operating room. A nurse helped him put on a clean surgical gown. Grace watched quietly. The homeless man who had entered the hospital asking for a blanket now looked exactly as he had in the old photograph hanging on the wall of honor. The room became completely silent. One young doctor whispered, "I can't believe we are about to watch a legend operate." Samuel heard him. Without looking up, he smiled. "Legends don't save lives. Teams do." The surgery began. 1 hour passed. Then 2. No one left the operating room. Grace watched the heart monitor with tears in her eyes. Samuel never rushed. Every movement was careful. Every decision was calm. Despite 20 years away, his hands moved with extraordinary precision. Outside, Ethan's mother sat on the floor praying. Teachers from the nearby nursing college, hospital staff, and former patients quietly gathered in the hallway after hearing the incredible news. Word spread across the city. Dr. Samuel Carter is operating again. After nearly 4 hours, the heart monitor suddenly gave a strong, steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The entire operating room froze. Then the anesthesiologist smiled. "We have a heartbeat." A nurse began crying. Dr. Collins closed his eyes in relief. Samuel quietly removed his gloves. "The little boy is going to live." The room erupted in applause. Not because of fame, not because of history, but because another child had been given a future. When Samuel stepped outside, Ethan's mother ran toward him. She couldn't speak. She simply hugged him. Then she whispered, "You saved my son." Samuel smiled gently. "No. Your son fought very hard. I only helped his heart remember what it was created to do." The following morning, news channels across the country told the same story. Homeless man saves child during emergency surgery. But reporters quickly discovered the truth. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was Dr. Samuel Carter, one of the greatest heart surgeons the hospital had ever known. Within hours, former patients began arriving. Some brought flowers. Others carried old photographs. One elderly man walked in with his granddaughter. "You operated on me 28 years ago. I've lived long enough to meet my granddaughter because of you." Another woman hugged Samuel tightly. You paid for my surgery when I was 12. I never knew it was you. Every hour, someone new arrived with another story, another life, another miracle Samuel had quietly created. That afternoon, the hospital board held an emergency meeting. For 20 years, Samuel's portrait had remained on the wall of honor. Now, principal physicians unanimously voted to restore his reputation completely. The false accusations were officially removed from every hospital record. His medical achievements were reinstated. But Samuel asked for one thing. Please, don't remember me for one successful surgery. Remember every nurse, every cleaner, every receptionist. They save lives too. A week later, Grace entered Samuel's hospital room carrying an envelope. I have something for you. Samuel opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. His hands immediately began shaking. Written on the front were 2 words. Dad. His eyes filled with tears. My daughter. Grace nodded. We found her. She saw the news. Samuel could barely breathe as he opened the letter. Inside it read, Dad, I believed a lie for 20 years. I thought you abandoned Mom. Now I know you spent your whole life saving other families because you couldn't save ours. I don't want to lose another day. If you'll let me, I'd like to come home. I love you, Emily. Samuel covered his face and cried like a child. Not because of pain, but because hope had finally found him again. 3 days later, the hospital entrance opened. A woman in her 30s slowly walked inside. She looked nervous. Samuel stood waiting. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Emily whispered, I'm sorry, Dad. Samuel opened his arms. You already came home. That was enough. She ran into his embrace. 20 years of silence, 20 years of regret, ended in a single hug. Grace quietly wiped away tears. Dr. Collins smiled. Even the security guard turned away to hide his emotions. 6 months later, Samuel no longer lived on the streets. He didn't return to performing full-time surgeries. Instead, every Friday afternoon, he sat in the hospital library with young medical students. He taught them something no textbook ever could. The greatest doctor isn't the one with the most awards. It's the one who never forgets that every patient is someone's whole world. Above the entrance of Sainton's Medical Center, a new bronze plaque was placed. It read, Dr. Samuel Carter, a brilliant surgeon, an even greater human being. Below it was one final sentence. The same words Samuel had spoken on the night he asked for a blanket. No act of kindness is ever too small to save a life. And from that day forward, every new doctor who entered the hospital stopped for just a moment, read those words, and remembered that true greatness is measured not by titles, but by compassion.